you doing? Welcome to live stream number 99. Today is Wednesday. It is 3 p.m. Eastern. It is November 29th, 2017. 99. Man, I think we're going to make 100, friends. So, today we're going to kind of like continue on what we talked about yesterday, what was doing this knife here, that where we model up the blade, and today we're just going to do the handle. Now, I did the title for this live stream is how to sculpt the handle, but I'm actually going to show you both how to model it in the model environment and do it in the sculpting environment, because if you just thought you were going to come here and watch these live streams and learn how to model a knife without me yapping about other things, sorry. Because we have a couple of things we got to touch on in regards to where we left off yesterday. Some important stuff, at least in my opinion. Yes, 99. We're going to talk about the giveaway at the end of the live stream. So if you're interested in that, it doesn't cost or hurt anything to be part of that giveaway. Wait till the end. Okay, guys, let's jump into it. So a couple of things I got to touch on from yesterday, and I kind of set it up, was I was talking about rule number 1 about creating a new component when you're starting out, in regards to if this is going to be an assembly with all different kinds of components, or if it's just going to be one body. And I have decided that I'm just going to make this whole thing as one body and not as individual components. And my reason for doing that is nothing more than if you want to create this one, so you have to manufacture it. I talked about my friend John Grimsmo. By the way, his website is down in the description after this video. If he was going to make this knife, he would probably break it down into individual components, because at some point he's got to assemble it and be all good with it. From my perspective, I'm really just modeling up this knife as to model up a knife. And I don't really care about these different things being different components. So I decided not to do it yesterday up front, because that was, if you got to do rule number 1 that is talked about on the forum, that means that before we even started doing anything on the screen, we would have right-clicked up here, and we would have created a new component. What that new component would be the blade, and then we could create another new component. Let me do that. And this one here, we could rename this one by slow left-click, and we could call this one the handle. And then instead of right-clicking up here and create another component, we could right-click on the handle, say new component. Now you'll see that that breaks down to a subcomponent, and in here we could then, you know, because this handle is kind of like different, there's some different parts within the handle, so we could, right, so there was the brass front, if that is what this part is, and then we could create another component in here, and we could call that brass and to, I hope you get what I'm trying to say here. So rule number 1 on the forum says that you should do all this before you even start modeling things up, breaking it down. That way everything gets organized. And I'm not saying that that is wrong. However, on purpose yesterday, let me delete all this. On purpose yesterday, I decided not to create any components. There is only that main file up here and one body to create the blade. And the reason I did that was I wanted to show you what actually happens when you don't follow what they call rule number 1. And it's okay. It's not, I don't want to get into a big argument about rule number 1, but in my opinion, it's perfectly fine. Don't worry about it. What you can do in this case is I can go up to the body here. I can right click on the body, and I can say create components from bodies. Okay? I click on that. Now you will see that my knife handle here gets put into a component. If I click the little plus sign, you will see that that body I just right clicked on is now within a component. What means I should actually click on this and call this the blade, right? Now this, I have now just made a assembly where this is the blade. The reason that people don't like to do this, or why rule number one, people yell about rule number one, is that if I now activate that blade, and I hope this is not too confusing, you will see that my feature tree down here has gone away. Because if I go up and activate this sub-assembly, you will see here was all the features that we created yesterday, and now that feature I just created to make the component is now here. Some people would argue that because I turned that component into that body into a component, that all this in here should have now ended up when I switch over to that component. Well, you can argue all you want about, you know, if it's, we can have hours debates about that, and I'm not going to tell you what is right or wrong. I'm just going to go back again to the point where I don't have any components in here, where we're back to a body. But the reason that it doesn't get sent in, it doesn't get packed up and sent in with that component, is because Fusion literally follows the history structure, and all this was created in order. That's why it's not breaking in, and I think it's perfectly fine. I don't think it's a big issue. You can absolutely, if you decide suddenly, oops, you know what, this is going to become its own component. I don't think, I mean, there's probably some scenarios where it is bad, but I don't think this is like terrible to go in right now and right click and say, I'm going to create a component from this. And then I just know that that component doesn't have the history in it, but it is out here because it actually follows the timeline. Okay? I hope that I didn't confuse the heck out of you. So that's really why I wanted to go with that, and why I wanted to show that yesterday. I'm just going to do this whole thing as one big body. I'm not going to break it down in components. If you want to do that, go ahead and do that. That's fine. One other thing I got to say. Somebody asked the question what these arrows are here on the canvas. That was literally from the screenshot that I stole online of this buck knife. Okay, enough. So let's get in and do this handle. So what we're gonna do? We're gonna do it both as a modeling, and we're gonna do it as a sculpting. And this because, you know, we can do that in 30 minutes or so. And I think it's important that you see kind of like how you have different options to how you will do something like a handle here. So let's start out with the modeling environment, because that was kind of like what we did yesterday with the blade. So the blade, I'm going to leave the blade turned on here. I'm going to leave the canvas on here. So let's model up the handle. Now I'm going to start a new sketch, and I'm going to show you some cool things here too, I think. I'm going to start a new sketch, and I'm going to start on the side of here. And what I'm actually going to do, we talked a little bit about yesterday using guide curves. We're going to do it the model way first. I am going to use these top here as guide curves. So I'm going to go back to my spline tool, and I'm going to zoom in a little. Well, I'm going to wait zooming in. That's okay. By the way, make sure also that you're aware of that there is like snap to grid option down here if you feel like this is snapping in. All right, I'm just going to select a point right around where I want the handle to start. I'm going to click another point right where there's this transition between here, between the wood and, is that brass? Yeah, it's got to be brass, right? I'm going to place another point down around here where we're going from another transition of the wood to the brass, and then about the end here, and hit the little green check mark. Okay. So this is not really pretty right now, but we're going to work with that quickly. So I'm going to go over here and zoom in. Now remember yesterday, we placed the origin right here on the corner. So I'm going to make sure that these two are kind of like in line here. So I'm going to go in and do a vertical relationship between the origin and that spline point. So I kind of like make sure they are right there. Another thing I'm going to do if I click on the point here is I actually like to start out by always making spline points horizontal or vertical. It just kind of like tightens things up a little bit. That's a good practice, I think. You can always delete them again if you want to. I'm going to drag this point down about where I think it's going to start around here. I'm actually going to go over and drag this one down too, get a little bit closer. So I kind of place these spline points, and now I'm going to go in and kind of adjust them to about where I want them. Okay, zoom out a little. So let's take a look. So this one here, this blue line is definitely not great. So let's go ahead here and kind of like start dragging on the spline points a little bit and see if we can get that blue curve. And I'm not going to try to be perfect. The longer you're sitting around playing around with it, right, the better it's going to get. So be aware of that. But I'm not going to waste too much time trying to make it perfect. So I'm just going to drag this one up there. Perfectly fine. Let's go back over. See how this one kind of curled up? Don't panic. It's probably just an end point that needs to be shortened up. Like that over there. I'm actually going to move it up a little bit. The problem with these splines is that when you are moving around different handles, you're kind of like getting a little bit different results. But this actually probably is pretty good. Right there. See, I moved one point and now the line here kind of like it. So you might have to play around with these a little bit to get them somewhat good. You can insert more spline points for more accuracy, whatever you want. Okay, I'm done. So I'm going to do this one up here. Then I'm actually also going to do another one because I'm going to have two guide curves, so two rails down here. So I'm actually going to just go up and do another spline, and I'm going to do kind of the same thing. I'm going to go a little faster this time. So I'm just going to kind of like place a couple of points, maybe one there, same intersection as the other one, same intersection over around here, and then the end there. Hit the green check mark. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing to this one down here. I'm going to create a vertical relationship between the 0 and this endpoint. So I know that those are good. I'm actually also going to do the same thing between over here, between this one and this one, right? Because, because those two are probably actually pretty much in line. This one and this one. Okay. We could go ahead here too. And just like before, grab this handle here. We could make that, well, parallel to these two lines. That's perfect. Let's get it a little bit closer. Let's get this one dragged in a little bit. Again, as you're working with splines, you will very quickly feel a lot more comfortable with them. So if you're looking at me right now and you're thinking, wow, like I can tell you that you spend a little time doing this and you're going to feel very comfortable doing this. This is actually not that difficult. Like I said before, most of the times when people are struggling with spline points because they're inserting too many of them. I should maybe have inserted one right here on the center point too, but I'm going to stop trying to be too perfect. Now I did also curl this one up, so watch out for that. Kind of move it around, get a little bit closer. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Another tip I want to give you is that, so we know that these spline points are in order or in line. We know these are in line. Sometimes it can actually help inserting a dimension. So D for dimension, and I'm going to show you why I'm going to do this in just a second. So I'm going to make this one 10.5. So I'm actually putting some constraints on these spline points. We talked about adding constraints yesterday. But these here I'm actually going to use for some construction planes. So I'm just rounding them up. Just to make my life a little easier. You know me. Okay, so this is really what I'm going to do with my two guide rails. Now what we're going to use for this is we are going to use the loft command. So I'm going to stop this sketch right here. And by the way, here's a tip. If we go down to that sketch, if you didn't know this, over here to the left, if I right click show dimension. Look at this. Now we can actually see them, and it's going to be useful. Okay. So for this, we're going to need our profiles. So I am going to turn the origin on so we can see it, And I'm going to use the ellipse for this. Now, I didn't take a side image of this knife, so we don't really know what we're going to have to play that by ear right here. Also, be aware, many times it's easier to kind of like start your sketches out to the side and then drag them in. So I'm just going to kind of like make this ellipse right here. You get to put in a dimension for the width. Put in 20. Like that. So now we get kind of like a 20 here. Now let me just move my part around here so you can kind of like see that that sketch is kind of like sitting on the side. It's not sitting the right place, but it's sitting right there where I want to start my handle. Now I can literally go in and use constraints, and I can say this point on the ellipse, I want that tied right into my spline point right up here. And I want the other end of my ellipse to be to this spline point down here. Now you can't really see it because the canvas is kind of in the way. See that? So now that's going to be kind of like the beginning of this loft profile. So I'm going to hit stop for that. And then I'm going to create another one right here in the intersection here. So that's going to be where I wanted this dimension. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create a construction plane. We used that offset plane before from this face, and I'm going to go out that minus 10.5 where I know my intersection is. So these are almost like reference dimensions for me now. I'm going to start a sketch on that. Right click, create a sketch. I'm going to create another ellipse. So I'm going to go, another ellipse here. I'm just going to sketch that one out here. Line goes up, a width. I'm going to make this one 10. Okay. Let me spin my model around again so you can kind of like see that ellipse is sitting out in space. I'm going to do exactly what I did before. Coincident relationship between that top point of that ellipse to where our spline was on top, and one from down here up to where it was up here. Okay? So what we just did was we kind of like created these two profiles through here. And if this went too fast, just rewind the video, right? So here comes the cool thing. We're going to go in and we're going to use a loft. And the loft looks for two profiles. So the first profile is going to be the first one we created. The second profile is going to be this one. And actually, because when we did this yesterday, I kind of like left this metal piece here, like a part of the stock of this blade. So it sees that, so I actually want to make it a cut. If you ever see red, it means cut. Because I'm going to make this into one big body, I'm just going to select the join. And when I do that, you will see that we get a nice transition between those two profiles. Look good? Hope it looks good. Now, we wanted to create those two side splines for our rails. So I'm going to go down over here to the right, click Rails, and I'm going to click right on this bottom one here. And look how nice that rail makes the top follow right there, right? It follows that really nicely. Now, don't throw up when you see the top. You see how we're really pushing that whole shape to follow along there. Well, we can, of course, select multiple rails. So I'm just going to select the top, and then everything kind of like relaxes, and we kind of like get that in there. Let me just hit OK. And we can kind of like see that that segment right there. Okay. Now our sketches, when we did this, this loft, our sketch gets consumed. You can always turn it back on over here on the light bulb. We can kind of like see that showing up again. So that is really the trick, to go all the way through with this part here. So now I can actually go ahead and I can create another part. Now, one of the things you will find handy is to actually steal edges from one end and to another. You don't always need them. But if we go in here, you can open up a sketch on this face, on that face we just ended at. And if you hit P for project, we can steal that edge around there, so we don't have to draw that same thing for the next loft. Because I recommended you breaking down into different lofts. Now, I'm going to show you the next segment here, because this is going to be interesting for you. That is that the next one, we're going to do a offset from the origin. This time it's going to be minus 95, right? Right there. So now I can start a sketch on this one, right click, create a new sketch, and we're going to do the ellipse again, and I'm going to do what I just did before. I'm going to sketch another one, exact same width, 10. But now you will notice if I go into the side view that the two endpoints that I want to snap into are not in line. You see that they're at an angle. You have this 3D sketch option over here on the sketch palette. Make sure that is turned on, because that will actually let the sketch go into what is called kind of 3D sketch mode. So if I do a coincidence between here to here, that was on the plane, so that is not really very exciting. But when I go in here and click from here to here, it will actually let that sketch go in an angle. Okay, I hope that was useful. So now, stop that. Go back again. Hit another loft. We can select that that edge we had right there. We can select our new sketch. Again, it goes back into a cut because I still had a bit of material left in there from the blade from yesterday. I'll change that to join. Right, now we get a handle, but of course it's straight transition between the two. So we're going to use the guide rails again to kind of give it that economic kind of look there. Okay, see how the handle kind of like start coming to shape? I'm going to create the last one, and then I'm going to show you the sculpt. I might run a few minutes over here today, but I think that it's important that you see both of these here. Now, because this is a smooth surface, I actually don't think I have to do that projected edge here. I'm going to test that out. So I'm going to create the last plane, offset plane from this face. That's going to be minus 105, right? So that plane goes right there. Let's create the last ellipse. Ellipse from this face and create that up there. I'm gonna make it 10, right? And then we're gonna do like I did before. I'm gonna do a coincident from this point to this point. And again, make sure you have that 3D sketch turned on so we can go ahead here and snap into there. We can kind of like get that angle on it. And let's see if we can't do a loft without projecting, because we don't have anything interfering on this one. So say loft between here to here. See, we get a perfect there. Again, I don't know if the rails really do much on this one, but just to pull it close, just like that, and click enter there. Now, now I can hide the dimensions again. That was on that sketch number 9. We can just hide sketch number 9. To wrap this this one up here, I would probably add some fillets. So we can go ahead and add a fillet to this edge here, and I don't know what we can go. 3. That actually might be a very nice fillet on here. We could probably also add a fillet over here on the top. We would add some chamfers to the knife and things like that. The last thing I wanted to do to this one before we get into sculpting is, of course, we can go in now. We can right click, do appearances, and let's go into metal. Let's go into brass, and I don't know which one we want to get, old or just brass polish maybe. And I'm going to change this to faces because bodies, we only have one body on this one, right? I'm kind of being a rebel doing this. And drag that over to that face, probably also onto that face there. We can do the same thing. Which one was it? This one. So there, to these last faces. This is just to add a little bit of make it look a little bit better, and then let's throw some wood on it. And I don't know what you make a handle out of, mahogany? That'd be kind of cool, wouldn't it? I don't know. So there is the modeled way to do this, right? So I hope that this was useful for some of you guys to see how to model up this knife here. Now I am going to spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes extra and jump in and show you how to do it with the sculpting. So if you were watching this just to learn the sculpting, I am sorry, but you gain hopefully some knowledge. Hopefully. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all the way back to where we did that, where we were. So I can drag all the way back to there. Now we're kind of back to where we were before we started the model once, right? I am going to start another, because this sculpting is going to go a little faster, I think. I'm going to start another sketch here, but instead of doing the guide curves, I'm actually just going to draw a line somewhere around here. Doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to go into the Sculpt workspace. It says, yep, I'm good with that. And what we can do in here is we have these different pre ones. We've talked about this before. So I'm going to select pipe. And if I select this line we just created, you will actually see that we kind of get a segment here. Now we can make it round. That's what I want. And we now get kind of like this round type of tubing. You can choose to create different segments, whatever you kind of want here. I'm just going to hit OK. So now I kind of like have this tube. Now I might just hide the well, let's just leave it like that. That's fine. Or we could turn the canvas down maybe. That's fine. We'll just leave it. I thought for a second that was a solid blade I'm seeing, but it's actually the image. We want the image. One thing I want to show you that you can do also in here is be aware of that you can subdivide it. So when I click subdivide in here, you can actually specify what we want. So I'm going to change this to 1. And I think if I select here along this edge, I can actually kind of subdivide this one down the center. This can be very handy because if I do this, subdivide this, now I can actually go in and add symmetry. I've talked about that before, where I create a symmetry between these two, what gives me like a green line going down, what means that now if I go in and select this edge, right click, edit form, and I drag this out, I'm actually dragging symmetry on the other side. That is a very nice function. Now, with this, I'll just undo that. With this, we can start kind of doing the same thing we did before. So let's go in here and I'm going to double click on the edge, what will make me select the entire ring, right click, hit edit form, and now we can actually kind of like start dragging this back to about the same place I wanted this to start, right? We could click on space, we click this top edge here and maybe start dragging this up a little bit there. So now we can actually start kind of like zoom in a little. We can start forming this to that shape we want for the handle. So right now I'm just selecting kind of like the upper end of this here. Now this here, of course, double click to select the whole edge around. We can kind of like start moving this segment down here. We can grab, I mean, now we're back to, we have covered sculpting before. So now we're actually back to where we can kind of like start playing with matching this the best we can, right? Whoops. And again, just like with the splines before, just get yourself in here, play around with this a little bit. That will definitely help you to kind of get this set up the way you want it. Oops, I just want one edge. Okay. And you can also insert more edges if you want to. That can be kind of handy. Like I'm looking at this edge here. We actually probably want that to right? It's gotta go all the way down there, what means that this edge here it's gotta be manipulated a little bit. What you can actually do, if I get out of this, hit OK, we can actually go over here and we can insert an edge. So we actually get an option here to kind of like insert another break. That might just mess up a little bit with my section here. But I think you know, I think you can see what I'm getting at. So we're inserting more segments in here that will give us more tools to kind of manipulate and kind of work with in here. Okay. So now at this point, we kind of got something somewhat similar. Not as spend as much time on it, but let me just hide the picture. Right? Not too shabby. Be aware of that also in here we have, there's a lot of different options. One of the things we can do here, if I double click on this back edge to select, double clicking an edge selects the whole loop. There is one in here called fill hole. Now you get some different options in here, how it's gonna close that up. Maybe that is a little bit better. Again, you can play around with how you want the ends to go. You can actually make them entirely flat if you want to, or you can play with kind of like the conversion of that here. I'm just going to hit OK to that. And I could also do the other thing on the other side. But what I want to show you is, let's try here now. When we're done doing this in the sculpting environment, let's stop finishing form by clicking up here. And when I do that, it's important that you know that this is just a shell right now because I didn't close this end up. What means that when I go over to my bodies over here, this is a surface body or patch workspace. And now this might get a little complicated. Now I'm jumping around a little bit. But what I'm going to do, what I could do, let me hide the body. What I could do here for our handle is I could go over to the patch workspace. I wanted to show you this. And I could create a patch here also. So I'm kind of like doing the same thing I did inside of the Sculpt environment, and hit OK. And then we actually ended up with two bodies. We could actually try to stitch them together. Now, if we stitch two bodies together and they are watertight, they will become a body. So now these three commands down here have actually become to a body of our handle. But when we turn on the knife, these two are still two separate bodies. Let me hide the origin. So now what we can do, I hope you guys are patient with me. We can go in and we can use that combine. We've used that one before. Click on that, and we can combine these two, and now they are going to become one single body. And we're kind of like back to where we were before with the handle. Now again, we could go in here and try to add some fillets. I'm not sure what the fillet command is going to do to this. It looks pretty good. So we can add fillets to this just like if it was a solid. I wanted to show you one other trick before, and again, if this is going way too fast, I'm sorry, just roll back, repeat, watch it again, right? You can slow down the videos. I want to show you one other trick that I wanted to show you forever. So this is really just one big body right now. Now, of course, when I go in to do the appearances of this, I would love to kind of show you the same image I did before, where I had the brass and I had the mahogany handle. But what happens when I drag this in is that it's really just going to be on all the kind of faces in here. Well, there is a tool. If we go back and we actually have a plane down here, but if we go back and create another plane, offset plane like we did before, what did we say it was? Minus 10.5, I think, to place it the same place. This is one thing I want to show you. This is great with appearances. I've talked about before, we can split bodies, but we can actually also split a face. And all we're doing is when we're selecting this handle, we are splitting with that plane. It's not changing anything other than just the kind of like the appearance of the face here. It's not really messing with anything other than just kind of like that blanket that is wrapped around. What that means is that now if I go back into appearances, and I can now apply that brass just to, oops, have it on faces, right to there. Oops, this shouldn't have done. Oh. Ooh, we just found an issue. Well, that's interesting. Well, you can see how it's highlighting it. Oh, there we go. All right. What the heck did I do? I'm sure that was user error. Now we can do the same thing, of course, down at the bottom here. We could create another plane in an angle, and we could put that on there. So kind of two different ways to get to the same place. Your preference on where you want to go. I hope that this was not too much. I hope that this was useful. Didn't go too fast, but I wanted to just. This is just, you give me the feedback. Thumbs up, thumbs down, right? That's what this is all about. Just trying to add a little bit more value to your day. Okay, so we're gonna wrap this up. Number 99. There's a couple of things I'm gonna tell you. Ooh, there's another thing that's important. Today is Wednesday. If you're watching the recording, sorry. Then you're probably also too late to get the t-shirt unless you're watching it before tomorrow. What is the... Oh no, before... Tomorrow's 100, yes, before tomorrow. Tonight on Facebook, I'm doing a live stream tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. And the reason that is important is this is for beginners. Absolute beginners. It's a little bit different than this live stream in the matter that I will answer your questions live. I'm not going to have too much planned. Tonight, we're going to model up this thing. Kind of like a cell phone holder thing that maybe you can 3D print if you have access to a 3D printer. So that's tonight, 8 p.m. on Facebook. If you... on Facebook, if you find my site, I think my ad MR, Mr. Lars Christensen, that's me. You will find me there 8 p.m. Tonight. I will also make sure the recording is up on YouTube, hopefully by tomorrow. All right, let's talk about another thing. The giveaway that is going to be ending tomorrow. I thought I had my... ending tomorrow. This is my good friend, good-looking colleague, Curtis, for this shirt for episode 100. The only thing you have to do to get this is go down in the description area of this video, and you will see a link to a SurveyMonkey kind of thing. And I'm only asking you to do 3 things that it's not going to hurt you. I just want to know if you want to enter. You don't have to enter. You don't have to. But how are you using Fusion 360? Did you pay for it? Are you a hobbyist, startup, teacher, student? How often are you watching the videos here on the channel? Do you get to watch them all the time, or just catching ones? What topics would you be most interested in? And then I do give you don't have to do this, but you do get an option to spill your guts. Anything you would like to see done differently? Should I get a different haircut? These socks are good, whatever you feel like. And if you want to get the access to the t-shirt, you got to do your first name, last name, and email address. It's only me who get to see the email. I'm not sharing this with anybody. So if you do receive spam, it's not because of me. I promise. If you don't trust me, don't enter your email address. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to join today's live stream. I hope it was useful. Again, you let me know. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I would really appreciate it. It's kind of like, one of the ways that I can go to my boss and be like, hey, look at this. People are actually watching this stuff and care for it. I'm going to do what I normally do. I'll end the broadcast and jump into the live stream and say hi to everybody. Again, if you have the time tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, On Facebook, we'll do Absolute Beginner. Thank you so much. Hope you have an awesome day. Thank you.